Ethan is a boy who has just turned 15 years old. Ethan's father is a politician. As a birthday gift, his parents gave him an Xbox. Ethan was even given his own screen, allowing him to play in his room. His room was upstairs, and in the weeks following his birthday, Ollie spent a lot of time up there. It was a Saturday night. Ethan is talking in an Xbox chat with two friends from his school. Both Ethan's parents went to a conference on the weekend, so he was home alone. He had turned up the volume on his headphones quite loudly, but as he paused the conversation, he heard a thumping sound coming from downstairs. If you were ever in your home as a child, you know that any sound, anything, can make your mind imagine the worst. Ethan turned down the volume and took one of the headphones back from his ear. Nothing would happen for the next 5 minutes, but soon he heard the same noise again. This time he told two of his friends about it, and they both advised him to go check it out. They joked that someone might have broken in. Ethan laughed and agreed to do it during a break in the game. He took out his headphones and started walking towards the stairs. Starting down the stairs, Ethan heard a soft whisper. He was only halfway there, but was completely paralyzed. He listened attentively, trying to determine whether what he was hearing was actually true or not. Finally, she went down to see the living room. There were two adult men, dressed in black, quietly walking around. All he knew at that moment was to go back upstairs. He slowly turned. One of the stairs emitted a loud, soft sound. Maybe they didn't hear it. Thinking that, Ethan quickly ran back to his room, put on his headphones, and told his friends to call the police to his house. He felt he didn't have enough time to explain, so he just told them to do it quickly and took the headphones off the table. He knew that locking himself in his room would be a clear sign that he was in there. Ethan hid deep inside the bathroom, turning off the lights and leaving the door ajar so they wouldn't notice. He could hear many supports slowly walking up the stairs. The sound of banging on Ethan's bedroom door rang out. Not as if trying to attract attention, the person is trying to make an effort to explore the door. The voice started screaming, saying things like Ethan needed to open the door if he didn't want anything bad to happen. Ethan was completely horrified. He decided to hide deep in the bathroom. There was a loud noise and Ethan's room door was successfully broken down. The sound of urgent footsteps came closer and closer. And as soon as the bathroom door was fully open, he tried to rush out. Ethan fell down. Those two men grabbed Ethan. He tried to get up to run but did not respond. They extend towards the living room. But this is interrupted by the distant sound of police sirens. The two of them stopped and looked at each other. They then ran quickly to the backyard fence, faded through, and fled. Moments later, the police showed up, and Ethan told them which direction the men had gone. The two men have never been found, nor has Ethan been able to describe any of their identities. They left behind in the house 4 different knives and several loaded pistols. It is known that Ethan's father took advantage of one of his people to escape corruption charges. You were sentenced to jail, but Ethan will be free and have a rich life. After being released from prison, with the goal of revenge, he hired someone to join the group to kidnap Ethan and bore his parents, but failed. His parents were very upset and moved to a new, safer neighborhood and designed Ethan a bodyguard. But meeting that bodyguard, Ethan felt very familiar, like he had met him somewhere.
I lived in a small apartment for most of my 20s, as it was all that I could afford since I lived alone. My complex was small and only had 6 total apartments in it. Most of the people living there were older and retired, and kept to themselves. I actually liked the fact that I didn't have to interact with any of them every time that I needed to go in or out of the complex, as I'm usually in a rush or just not in the mood to socialize. Anyways, I lived on the top floor, and the room across from me had an old couple living there for almost 2 years before they moved out. I never talked to them, so I didn't really care, to be honest. But several months go by before someone new moves in, and another 2 weeks went by before I actually met them. I was getting ready for work one morning and preparing my packed lunch when I hear the neighbor's door open. I didn't think much of it until another minute went by, and I realized that I never heard the door close. I finished getting ready and put my shoes on, then opened my door to leave. I immediately noticed that the neighbor's door was still open, and a tall man in his 40s or 50s was standing right outside the door facing me. He smiled and introduced himself. I faked a short smile and told him my name, then said I had to go to work and began walking past him. But as I started down the stairs, he asked me to come in for a little bit and have breakfast with him. This was really weird, as I had just told him that I needed to go to work. But I just said sorry and continued down the stairs and out of the complex. While I was at work that day, I thought about how strange the interaction was. Thankfully, when I got back home, I was able to get into my apartment without any interactions. But the next morning, I woke up to a knock at the front door. I was really annoyed because I had work today and now I was up early, but I quickly got dressed and opened the front door. My neighbor was there, but strangely, he was standing right in front of his open door again. He asked me to join him for breakfast again, to which I obviously declined and told him in a more aggressive manner to not knock on my door so early. The man didn't seem very happy about my answer and just kind of stood there. Then he said that I didn't have to leave for work for a while, and I had enough time to eat with him. I knew that there was something wrong with this guy, as there was a lot about that response that was creepy. I firmly said no and then backed away and closed my door, making sure to lock it. Again, the more I thought about this guy, the more creepy and disturbing the interaction seemed. The rest of the day went by as usual though, and I got home around 6. I made some dinner and watched a movie and got ready for bed around 11. I laid in bed for a while thinking about my creepy neighbor and wondering what to do about it. I decided that if anything else happens, I'd contact the owner of the complex and have him talk to the guy. Then I leaned over and turned off my lamp and tried to fall asleep. But a few minutes later, I heard the neighbor's door creak open. I waited silently, listening to what the guy was doing, but I couldn't hear anything else. Again, though, I never heard the door close. I was pretty nervous, unsure of what the man could possibly be doing this late at night. Eventually, though, I drifted asleep due to not hearing any further noises for over an hour. I'm not sure how long I slept before a loud knock at the door woke me up. But these knocks didn't come from my front door. They were at my bedroom door. I shot up completely terrified and turned on the lights. The only thing I had to defend myself with was a small screwdriver on my nightstand. I grabbed it and stood next to my bed, shaking in fear, before picking up my phone and calling 911. When they arrived at the front door, I quickly got out of my room and opened it. I was surprised the door was even shut, but I told the officers everything and all about my suspicions of the neighbor. Unfortunately, though, there was no real evidence of a break-in, and they couldn't do much at all. I knew what I heard was real, though, and I did not feel safe in my apartment anymore. I called my sister later that day, and she agreed to let me stay at her place for a few days. Those days went by quicker than I hoped, though, and I started driving back to my apartment on Saturday evening. I tried to stay calm, assuring myself that the guy had given up, I know, and everything would be okay. I pulled into the parking lot and made my way into the building. The sun had just set, so the staircase was dim. I slowly made my way up, trying to stay quiet as to not let my neighbor know that I was coming up. Once I reached the top, I saw his door was closed, and I got a big sense of relief as I quickly made my way through my door and locked it behind me. I dropped my bag on the hallway and turned on the lights as I turned the corner into my living room. I jumped back screaming as the man was sitting right on my couch staring at me with a wide, awful smile. I sprinted out of the entire complex and into my car, then called the police again and waited for them in a nearby parking lot. When they arrived about 10 minutes later, we drove up to the complex and they went into the apartment while I waited by my car. Surprisingly, they came out just a minute later with the man in handcuffs. They said he was still sitting on the couch and that they also found the small knife in his pocket. The most disturbing part of this whole situation, though, was that when he was questioned, he admitted to breaking in 3 separate times, and I only knew about the 2 incidents. Which meant that at one point he was hiding in my apartment, probably watching me without me even knowing.
My house is on the edge of a small town, having several acres of land surrounding it. It isn't extremely isolated, but the nearest house is a quarter-mile away, so it's definitely not your regular neighborhood home. I chose to live there for that reason, though. Anyway, I had lived there alone for almost 6 years when this happened. It was a normal weekend, and I had no plans at all. I was spending most of my time watching TV or working outside in the garden. Sometime in the afternoon, I was walking through the house and passed by a window when I saw something odd. There was a person walking through the trees far off in the distance. Legally, it was my property, and I knew they could see my house from there. But what was most odd was the direction they were walking. They were walking toward the back of my house, which led to nothing but a vast, woodsy area. I watched by the window as they slowly walked past my backyard and kept going until I lost sight of them in the woods. I didn't care so much that they were on the edge of my property, but it was just a weird thing to see given the location of my house. I went on with my day, looking out the window a few more times to see if he ever came back, but I never saw anything. Later in the night, I sat down to watch a movie in my living room. In the middle of the movie, I began hearing footsteps. They were soft and slow, walking through the leaves outside. I got up quietly and looked out a nearby window. I jumped back, seeing a man just a couple feet from me. After the initial shock, I poked my head up again. He looked like he didn't even notice me at all. He was still walking, slowly making his way across my yard. They looked like the same person I'd seen earlier, but it was hard to say for sure. I watched them walk all the way to the other side of my property and go into the trees. It was one of the creepiest things I'd ever seen, especially since he came so close to my house this time. I stayed up a little bit later than usual to make sure he didn't come back, and I was ready to call the police if he did. By 11, I hadn't seen any signs of him at all, so I felt safe enough to get some sleep. I went upstairs and passed out. I don't know exactly what time, but I woke up in the middle of the night to that familiar sound. Footsteps right outside my house. As I got dressed and ran downstairs, the sound stopped. I looked through every window and didn't see anyone. Then I went up to the front door and looked out the peephole. That same man was standing in my driveway, looking up at my house. It was an eerie sight, like he was plotting something. I got my phone and contacted the police, but I knew it would be probably 15-20 minutes before they would even be here. When I looked out at the driveway again, the man was gone, and that's when I heard the same footsteps around the side of my house. I waited quietly, hoping he'd just go away. But then there was a sharp, sudden sound from my backyard, followed by absolute silence. I was shaking, standing in the same spot when the sound of another shot rang through the house. The silence afterward lasted for 15 minutes until the police arrived. When they did, I heard them yelling outside, telling the man to drop the gun and everything. This went on for a few minutes, but eventually the police were able to get the man to comply. After being questioned by the police, the man confessed that he had mistaken the address. His intention was to break into Cade's new boyfriend's house to threaten him into breaking up with Cade. He couldn't accept the truth and wanted to intimidate him into leaving Cade. However, he foolishly got the address wrong. Even though it was just a misunderstanding, I was haunted by everything that happened that night. I vowed to myself to be more vigilant and cautious from now on.